U.S. efforts to get backing for military intervention in Syria have made some progress. A Senate panel has approved a resolution authorizing the use of force, but not the use of troops on the ground. Now, the plan still has to go through the entire Senate. Another vote is scheduled to take place next week. Kimberly Holkett is live for us in Washington, D.C. Kimberly, first of all, just talk us through this vote that's just happened there at the Senate.
Well, it was significant because it was a show of support for the president's measure. As you point out, it was a vote 10-7 in favor of an amended measure that was put forward by the president. It will limit in terms of the duration, just a 60-day window with a 30-day extension. And it will also, more importantly, and key for many of the senators, make sure that there can be no combat troops if there is congressional authorization for strikes in Syria. Now, having said that, show of support in the Senate, but certainly a very different story in the House of Representatives. The panel on the House side, much more testy exchanges when the Obama administration was making its case. We heard from Secretary of State John Kerry, the Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, as well as the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Many from both the President's party as well as the Republicans who dominate that House really challenged the administration to provide proof of intelligence claims that, when challenged, the Secretary of Defense appeared evasive in answering those questions.
Secretary Hagel, there's been a report in the media that the administration has mischaracterized post-attack Syrian military communications and that these communications actually express surprise about the attack. This is a very serious charge. Can you please release the original transcripts so that the American people can make their own judgment about that important issue?
What transcripts are you referring to?
The transcripts that were reported that took place after the attack, in which the government has suggested that they confirmed the existence of an attack, but actually it's been reported that Syrian commanders expressed surprise about the attack having taken place, not confirmed it.
Well, that's probably classified. Congressman, I'd have to go back and review exactly what you're referring to.
A very interesting excerpt there, Kimberly. Clearly, this is not a done deal. There's an awful lot of skepticism still surrounding a possible strike.
Indeed, it's not just the questions about intelligence that these House panel members had. There was also a lack of confidence in the fact that if there is a military strike, it would not sort of spark a wider regional conflict, which is of serious concern to many of the members who are challenging the administration. As well, there's a fear that really any U.S. action is simply not going to have any impact when it comes to the underlying conflict, which in essence is a Syrian civil war. And for these reasons, it was sort of the overwhelming opinion of many of those House members that this is something that the United States should not be involved in.
Kimberly, the public's perception. We saw earlier John Kerry giving a speech, and there was a display of red hands above him. Can you explain what that's signifying for us?
Well, it's sort of very common on Capitol Hill to have protesters appearing at these hearings. This one was no exception. Blood on the United States' hands is really what that is symbolizing, that if the U.S. is to take military action, it will have blood on its hands. And so that's what these protesters are trying to say. There were protesters wearing T-shirts saying, "Don't drag us into another war." This is sort of a sentiment that's lingering from a very war-weary public. After 10 years of war in Afghanistan and Iraq, there is a lot of distrust about the Obama administration on the heels of the Bush administration leading the United States into the invasion of Iraq on faulty intelligence. There is really no confidence that this administration will be any different. And so as a result, it's not just protesters showing up at these hearings, but it's the American public reaching out to their members of Congress. There were members in this House panel who were holding up transcripts and emails by the stacks of calls they say they've received urging them not to support in favor of the president's measure for military strikes in Syria.
Kimberly, thank you. Kimberly Holkett reporting there live for us from Washington, D.C.